Welcome to It's a New Day. My name is James Young. Today my guest is?
City Council President Lovely Warren.
Okay, well, we're going to start with the name. I would imagine when growing up, when you told people that your name was Lovely, what kind of response did you receive from that?
And your name is? Nobody really believes that my parents would actually name me that, but I'm named after my aunt, Lovely McCleary. She went to Madison cheerleader, and my parents at the time didn't know what to name me, and so she walked in the hospital room and said, "Name her after me. Name her Lovely Ann Warren," and so that's how I got my name.
Do you feel lovely?
Absolutely, all the time.
Very good. Now, will you tell us what it is that you do with on the city council? I know we know that you're an elected official, but can you give us a definition of what the city council does and what your particular job is?
Well, our number one role is to manage and look at and improve the mayor's budget. We also have to approve the sale, lease of land in the city of Rochester. We also work closely with our constituencies. I represent Northeast Rochester, but as president, I have a hand in everything that goes on in the city of Rochester, from things that's happening at the port to downtown to College Town to housing developments to issues surrounding our police department. So we do a little bit of everything, but our main role is looking at the budget in real estate.
Now, which district do you have? Which part of the city do you have?
I am a district council person. City council is made up of 9 people, 4 district people and 5 at-large members. I represent the northeast side of Rochester, so I represent from the Genesee River all the way basically over to the most northern part of Culver Road, from Main Street to the Irondequoit border. So I come up Goodman Street and then I take a right at Clifford Avenue and basically go all the way down Clifford Avenue to Culver Road.
One of the things that I'd like to be able to maybe clear up for the constituency, when you want something in your district, how does that process happen? Do you have to get the approval of the other commissioners? Do you guys have to go meet in the room, or how does that work? One of the things that I'd like to be able to maybe clear up for the constituency, when you want something in your district, how does that process happen? Do you have to get the approval of the other commissioners? Do you guys have to go meet in the room, or how does that work?
Well, Rochester, we have a strong mayoral form of government, which is different from some other places. Back in, I believe, 1984, we went to a strong mayoral form of government. We used to have a city manager, and where city council was more of a administrative and had a more active role as far as the budget was concerned. But now we have a strong mayoral form of government. So a lot of money and the way that it's divided up comes directly from the mayor's office. Of course, we have to review and approve that budget, but years ago, or for a number of years, City Council and the City of Rochester operated in a blanket type of way, where what we did for one district, we did for all districts. And we recognize that the needs are different. That what I need in Northeast Rochester is different from what Carlo Palumbo may need in the Northwest. I have a lot of dilapidated housing that needs to be demolished, high crime, and so someone, say in the Southeast district, don't necessarily need as much demolition as I might need. So I would get more demolition dollars from my district. And if there's issues that come up, far as programs or other things, that road construction, we would go to the administration and talk to the mayor and talk to his folks about those issues of concerns. But we try to look at everything and look at every district and what their needs are and what would make those constituents happy.
When you talk about housing, crime, what about economic development dollars? Are there dollars that can come into this community to help start on small businesses, tax incentives to draw businesses into this community? Because it does seem to be a disparity When you look on the east side, or on East Avenue or Park Avenue, Monroe Avenue, you see a thriving business community there. When you go on the other side of Goodman, on the other side of Main Street on Goodman, then you start seeing where it seems like the businesses start disappearing. Same thing with Portland, Hudson, until you finally get out to around the corridor back into the suburbs. How can we get some economic development dollars in there?
Well, we do have economic development dollars, and we try to attract businesses into Northeast Rochester, but you can't tell people where they're opening their business. But I understand that we have been on this at one point in time. Joseph Avenue, Hudson Avenue, that was the hub in Rochester. You had a number of businesses back in the 70s and 80s. And so we started to see a decline, and now we're starting to see it go back up. If you look at what's happened with Genesee Brewery and the investment dollars that they're making, they're getting ready to build a healthcare center on their property across the street from Genesee Brewery on St. Paul. George and O'Simon building, he's putting in a $5 million development. I just on Friday or last week, Thursday, I believe, was over meeting with Tyrone Reeves, who owns 3 manufacturing plants in the city. 2 of them, one is on Clinton Avenue, another one he's opening up on Hollenbeck Street. We have attracted, and not necessarily attracted, but kept Hickey Freeman on Clinton Avenue when they have been looking to move and expand their business, but the city has actively recruited and tried to make sure that they maintain their presence on Clinton Avenue. We just attended a ribbon cutting for a new pharmacy on Joseph Avenue, and last year we opened up a new laundromat facility on Hudson Avenue. So do we have issues and we have businesses that have vacated? Absolutely. But when I look at where we were and where we're going to now, and in the present, I see positive things happening for Northeast Rochester.
Now, I have to talk to you about education. As I'm quite sure that you remember, the last mayor wanted to bring the school board under the guidance or direction of the city. And I asked you off camera, does the city still feel that way? So to be fair to the viewers, I'd like for them to know what we were talking about. Would you share that with us?
Well, the way the city is made up as far as the relationship with the school district, the city gives $119.1 million out of $400 million, almost $400 million out of our budget directly to the school district. That's a mandate from the state. The school district doesn't have the authority to borrow money. We have to borrow the money, so it's our credit. It's our, bond rating. So, but we can't dictate what is done with that money. The buildings, all the school buildings, are actually owned by the city of Rochester. They're not owned by the school district. So there is a relationship there. And so when our former mayor, now lieutenant governor, looked at the situation, and many of us, because I too supported mayoral control, we looked at the fact that we are losing this war here when it comes down to our children. And we thought that if you shake up the system a little bit, or a lot, that we would be able to change it if we did some things differently. And I think that conversation has sparked a lot before we even talked about that. I mean, at least we raised the issue, or he raised the issue, and bringing it up. So now we have a new superintendent. And, the goal is to work with the superintendent and work with our school board to make sure that we're doing what's best on behalf of our students. One of the things that I know that we're doing from the city side is we have currently 3 programs that are in our schools. The East High Firefighter Program. At Franklin, we have a police program that's done at Vanguard High School, and we had a 911 ECD program at Dr. Freddie Thomas. We are going to bring all those programs into one place, and we're going to do that at the new EOC building, Educational Opportunity Center in downtown Rochester. The superintendent and his staff and our mayor's staff has worked very, very hard to make sure that this program is something that our students that are in high school can look forward to. Being a part of, and when they graduate, having access to either the police department, fire department, or 911.
Well, I have to come back to this because the budget for the city is $400 million, which is so much considerably less than the school board's budget of $690 million. And not only that, a quarter of your budget goes to the school district.
Yeah.
So in my mind, just dealing from a mathematical point of view, it seems like the city or city government is capable of managing a budget more so than the school district. Because if you are managing a city for approximately $300 million, I think that that's pretty significant when we look at the school board's budget of $690 million and only getting results of 46.1 students graduating. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you, is there an emphasis of trying to bring in more black teachers? Would that make a difference in the education system?
I know years ago when Mr. Perkins and Mr. Bivens and Ms. Moore, and there was really an effort by the school district to go to across this country to recruit African American or black teachers, and I think that it helps. I think that one thing that we have to really get past is this fact that, what the excuses, and people like to give a lot of excuses. They like to blame the parents, or they like to blame the fact that the money or the students aren't coming prepared to learn. And I just know from my community perspective, or, even my perspective growing up, that, my grandparents didn't necessarily go to the school for my aunts and my uncles and my mom. My dad was more so involved in, my education perspective than my mom was, but that's just not something that typically we really do in our community, but we have to do what we have to do on behalf of our children. And I believe that if we give them the good foundation, let them know that we believe in them, that we want them to succeed, and that we will do everything in our power to make sure that they succeed, that's the most important thing. I think that we also need to understand that every child is not going to go to college, and we educate and we as if that is the case. We need to meet children where they're at. For example, when I was in high school, Edison Tech was truly a technical school. Mm-hmm. Councilmember McFadden always talks about how when he went to Edison, he was going to be in aviation. He graduated with going into aviation and decided that, and he had a job offer. He decided not to do that. He decided to go to college. And so those options we have taken away from our children, that technical option. And I think that has actually, hindered our progress, because if I'm good at mechanics and I like working on cars or computers or television, I need to be able to have that option. And we have gone away from that. And I think that more so now people recognize that. With the Bob Brown School of Construction and the firefighters program that I was just talking about, that's going to be at EOC. I think that people really recognize that that we should be preparing students to enter the workforce as well.
I think too that you hit on another point that I think that is missed in the education of our children. As you mentioned, how your parents and your family members, and perhaps several of your friends growing up, it was a different time. Parents were at a different age level, whereas today we're having parents that have kids in high school under the age of 35 or under the age of 38. So I know that that's a big difference, and many of those parents aren't educated. I know that the city is involved with a program that I just think that is just phenomenal, and that is effective Black parenting. Can we have more programs, or are there more programs like that that can go into the community to assist and help develop stronger family units? Because I think that if the family unit is stronger, that's one of the things that is going to make the city stronger.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, there's no city like Rochester as far as giving the way that Rochester gives across the board. When you look at our county and the number of dollars that we give, the number of programs that we have, if you have an issue, we have a program to solve that. We are definitely program rich and results poor. And it's not the fact that people are not trying. I think that people do try, but we have to get to the point where we are actually helping people to fish and not necessarily giving just, not preparing them. I think one of the biggest things that we need to do as a community is prepare our community to enter into the workforce. One thing that Kodak was to this community, rather from the janitor to the CEO, everyone made a living wage. They had a job. And, we have the city just sponsored a program with the city school district regarding our facilities modernization program where we did recruitment, just open it up. You had over 1,000 people come looking for jobs. We need to look at that number and say, what is the wave of the future? What are the jobs that are going to be coming online in the next few years and even now that we can prepare our community for, so that they can work, so that they can feed their families and make a living wage. Rochester has a wealth of manufacturing plants, small businesses and large businesses. A lot of us really don't know that. And I can be honest with you, I really didn't know that nationally we are recognized as one of the best manufacturing cities nationally. And so how do we prepare our citizens to enter into that field? Because, as you said, there are a number of people that are eligible for retirement. If you even look at city government, 911, our 911 office, in 5 years, maybe half of the employees there will be eligible for retirement. Who's going to do that job? And I think that that's the conversation that we need to be having with our citizens and preparing them to enter into that workforce and get those jobs and working with our manufacturing plants. We have we have a number of optics businesses here. Actually, we have, companies that turn down business because of the fact that they don't have the workforce to work in it. So, those opportunities we need to make available to our high school students. And I would have to commend East High, who next year we'll have an optics program there. And so I think that we're looking at those and we're doing something about it.
Well, the answer that you just gave me, in my mind, is even more reason why perhaps maybe the city council or the city should, really get, involved and perhaps follow up on the mayor. Now, I know we spoke off camera, and you're saying that that is something that has to come from.
Yes, mayoral reform or education reform is something that comes from the state legislature. City council does not decide, or the mayor doesn't decide that they want to have control over the school district. It's the state legislature that would have to give the city of Rochester that particular power. They have it in Yonkers and they have it in New York City, but despite of whether that happens or not, we have to do what we have to do on behalf of our young citizens. We have to prepare them for the future, and working with the school board and working with the new superintendent is something that we are all committed to doing. As city council, we meet with three of our members meet with the school board members on a regular basis to talk about different ideas, different initiatives. And one of the things that I have really been asking for a study on and talking to school board members about is the fact that they went from neighborhood schools to school choice. And I think that if you looked at what going from a neighborhood school to a school choice environment has done to our neighborhoods, has actually made a decline. You have taken at least, from, any given neighborhood, within a 10 blocks radius, hundreds of kids off the street a day. They would walk to school, they would walk from school, and you have just left it open to unsavory activities. And so you wonder why kids nowadays don't want to walk to school. 80% of our children now are bused across the city. You have some that get on a bus in the 19th ward and are bused all the way to school number 50. And so I think that, we have to look at those opportunities, and then we have to work together to build up the neighborhoods and build up our neighborhood schools and make them better so that every child, no matter what part of the city they live in, no matter if they walk to school or take the bus to school, that they're being educated to the best of our ability. And you make it about the children. And also, in doing that, make the neighborhood better, because you have children, you have people on the streets, you have them, laughing to and from school. Parents or grandparents come out. My grandmother used to walk my sister and I and my cousins to school number 4. And, I just remember it was 500 kids on the streets, back and forth. You didn't have the issues. You didn't have, you had issues, but it wasn't to the degree that you have it now.
Well, as I said, all you're doing for me is making a compelling argument for why you guys should be running this. But I do understand the dynamics and the politics behind this and what it would take for this to happen. But we've got to do something, because as it stands now, I believe some of this has got to be falling on a deaf ear somewhere because of the unbelievable failure rate and what is going to happen to these people who fail. The job market is not going to be there for them. You're preparing, or you're setting up for these job markets to be available. But if we don't have the people to fill those slots, then we're right back in the same soup all over again.
Well, I think that we don't give up on it.
Of course not.
You have, programs, GED programs and, other programs to help with that. And I think that, one of the things that I often talk about is the fact that, you're right, we do have a problem nationally with our educational system in urban environments. And, we have a number of students that graduate from our city schools and other schools that's paying college tuition for a high school education because they have to take remedial classes. So you've actually gone through 12 years of, when you look at the cost, $20,000 per student. On average, at a city school district, and they graduate and they attend MCC and they take the test and they realize that they need remedial math, they need remedial English, they need remedial classes, and so not one credit is earned. How do you change that? You have to think about things differently for the students. How do I make your life better? By listening to what you're telling me, number one, but number two, giving you other options, making school fun for you. Now, I'm not going to say that I was the best in high school because I wasn't, but but we have to give our students alternatives, because if we can't get them to high school graduation, then we failed. When you talk about the number of students that we have let down, it's sad. What do we do to help those students? We put in programs and support workforce development programs, try to help them get their GED, work with them to do that, and work with them to find a job. And a number of our not-for-profit agencies like Baden Street and Action for a Better Community and those places are doing workforce development and GED prep. And so we're doing what we can. Can we do it? Can we do more? Absolutely. But I think that we have to take it one day at a time.
But as I said, in my mind, you make a very compelling argument for why the city needs to be more hands-on, or I would feel. And this is coming from someone who doesn't believe in big government. But now I'm saying that the things that you're talking about, Rochester is unique in itself. Because when we talk about big government, it really isn't big government. This is what government should be doing for its citizenry. And I can tell you, I truly appreciate because I benefited from some of the things that the city and the county has offered that you just don't find in other places. So I really take my hat off to the city.
Thank you.
I want to reminisce a little bit. We had a conversation off camera, and I was talking about some of the old soldiers. I had mentioned that this is not the Urban League of Lakey Ashford. Lakey Ashford was someone that was in this community that truly made a difference during those turbulent times of the coming out of the 50s into the 60s and early 70s. This is not the same Action for a Better Community, ABC, that Jim McCullough started. I mean, along with Reverend Florence, I mean, these guys were warriors. And I also have to include Willie Lightfoot in that too, as well as other people. But they were warriors to the sense of that they were truly community oriented, and they were able to somehow mobilize this community. Maybe it was a different mindset. We talked about this off camera, but would you share that with our viewing audiences, what we talked about?
Well, one of the things that we are doing, we recognize that that when it comes to leadership in the community, we have been a bit fragmented. On April 26th, you had all of the Rochester African American or Black elected officials came together with the community to develop and try to develop an agenda. I think that what you had in those days, you had an issue that resonated with the people, and people mobilized and people got active, and because it was an issue that affected us all. Education is an issue that affects us all. I'll never forget what Minister Franklin Florence said in July '64 documentary, where he said the issues in '64 were jobs, education, and health care. The issues today are the same: jobs, education, and health care. We're still dealing with those same issues, but we're dealing with it in a different type of way. So as the Rochester area Black Political Caucus, we said to one another, look, Willie Joe, you're over there, in the Southwest, doing what you do. I'm in the Northwest doing what I'm doing. Assemblyman Gant is representing us on the state level, and Adam, you're working on behalf of your people. What can we do if we work together? And we recognize that that's what we have to do. But we don't want to tell the community what the issues are or how to solve those issues.
Okay, but I want to stop right there. That's where we part. And the reason why I say that is because these communities have elected you, the people that you just named, into office.
Yes.
And the reason why we did that is because we're looking at you for guidance.
Yes.
And inside that leadership, you're going to have to tell us what to do. See, and I think that that's where the disconnect is. Those old warriors, see, they told us what the issues were and told us how we could resolve those issues. And a lot of that was done through protesting. A lot of that was done through boycotting. A lot of that was done through demonstration. And I think that this is what we're looking for, and I think maybe we're missing, is that we need you to tell us what to do.
Well, James, it's not that we are not telling people what the issues are. What we need from the community is to prioritize that.
Okay.
If a job and job development and workforce development is the #1 issue, or is it the fact that I can't feed my family? It's wintertime and I don't have any heat. My children don't have clothes or shoes or coats to wear. because what we tend to do as leadership is focus on the big things. We focus on the economic development, the housing and the jobs. When the low-hanging fruit, the things that we can actually do to solve and make your life just a little bit better is low-hanging fruit. Your child needs help with math. Well, you don't understand that there's 20 programs out here that would help him or her with math. You need clothes. Well, there's a number of clothing banks around the city. And so it's not that, and even I believe, and I beg to differ that the Minister Florence's and the Jim McCullers told the community. They heard from the community first. And they developed the agenda behind what they heard as a priority. The number one priority and the reason why Hanover houses got torn down was because housing was an issue. The conditions that our families were living in was beyond, repair. So those places were demolished and new forms of housing were built. But look at the situation that was created. Because in Northeast Rochester, I have 6 low-income projects or affordable housing units in a 10-block radius. So one issue was solved. You got better housing on behalf of families. However, you concentrated poverty. And so you have a whole segment of the community, poor people, that are living in one section of the community. And what happens in that situation? A lot of the times the crime rate is higher there. Rather it's other social issues, domestic violence issues, other things that happens when that's done. So I love my community, but I would say that if people could do it a little bit differently, they would. And they would not do it because we're going to have poor people. We're going to have, low-income people, and that's black, that's white, that's Hispanic. It's not just to the black community, but you're going to have poor people. But how we manage that, and what do we do on behalf of these individuals so that we help you and not hurt you, is what government and what our local and what our leaders and in particular the Rochester Area Black Political Caucus are looking forward to doing. Listening to the community, developing the community, and developing the agenda. And from that agenda, going to develop policy that helps. Cynthia Elliott, one of the members of the caucus, often talks about the fact that Social Security wasn't made for blacks. When Social Security was first birthed, it was farmers could not access it, nor domestic workers. And at the time, who were the farmers and who were the domestic workers? But policy, government had to institute policy to change those things. If you look at educational system, Brown versus Board of Education, I believe it's 58 years since then. You look at, that government had to institute policy to try to make things fair. And we talked today about education. And is it not the same disparity today as it was in 1958, 54? It is. Mm-hmm. The children that are predominantly in urban environments in this country are undereducated. They are undereducated.
When you talk about the housing and when they tore down the projects and built the low-income housing, once again, now that falls back under economic development, is that we put people into, if we will, better housing. But now, does that have any value? Can they resell that? They're having children. that they can't pass this on, or that don't want the house because the house has no value. How do we begin to turn those things around? And I believe that if we can find a way to bring value, we were trying to resolve an issue, which you, as you call the low-hanging fruit, I'm stealing that from you. And we did that. But at the same time, we now have another issue because we just have poor people concentrated in a particular area, which now helps generate and keeps alive the crime, the underground. Now, we'll take one part of that because I want to talk to you about crime as well, because I know that that's a tremendous issue that this community is faced with. And drugs just devastated this community in the late 60s.
You talk about heroin, I talk about crack cocaine.
Exactly, and it
So,
was just devastating.
You know, to go back to your housing, your issue, when you talked about the housing issue that we have, you know, we have a number of different programs here with the city of Rochester. A lot of first-time home buyers programs. One of the things, and when I talk about policy, currently the federal government has a tax credit, and state government have tax credits where, you know, a lot of our not-for-profit agencies, they can build a new housing. You look at Mildred Johnson Estates 1 and 2, El Camino Estates 1 and 2, where these new housing units are going up. Well, this is the catch to that. The person that has to live in the house for 15 years before it can be sold.
Okay.
So if I am a family and, you know, say right now I'm a certified nursing assistant and I'm going to go back to EOC and get my LPN, and in 5 years I'm prepared to purchase that house. For me, I think that it would be beneficial to the community to allow you to purchase the house in 5 years. I have now made you a homeowner. You're starting to build equity in your home, and you know, you like living in there, and you're investing in our community. But the way that the policy is set up, that house has to stay a rental unit for 15 years. I don't think that that's fair. So what happens to the LPN, that the CNA, the first CNA that went on to be an LPN, when she wants to buy that house in 5 years, she moves out, she goes and buys a house. But where does she buy a house? Now, she can live anywhere. So she takes her family and say she moves to Henrietta. We have just lost a great tax-paying citizen that lived in that benefited from the low-income housing and the affordability of the city. But when they had an opportunity to buy in the city, many of them, for whatever reasons, decide to buy outside of the city. And so that's what we have to. People are mobile nowadays. You know, we also talked about the fact that, you know, you in your generation had hands-on relationships with people like Dr. Jordan and, you know, Dr. Thomas and, you know, Josh Lofton and all these people. And when you walked out, you know, a lot of times everyone lived in the same neighborhood. So we talked about, you can rattle off the areas where affluent and, you know, more, you know, poor blacks lived. They lived together. And they were, and as a child, you were able to see that. I'll never forget, one day I was leaving for work, and I live right around the corner from Northeast Prep, Frederick Douglass High School. And these children were walking to school or had just gotten off the bus, and I was, going to work, and they said, "You live here?" You know, and I said, "Yes, I live here." And they couldn't believe it. It was a shock to them. And so I think that we have to, as a community, invest in our city by living here as well.
Now, let's talk about the scourge of drugs. I know that this is one of our major problems here, and it doesn't really matter what part of the city that you live in or even in the county. Drugs has definitely devastated this community. How are you dealing with it? How are the city officials dealing with this? I know that it's got to be more. I think we've now come to realize just locking people up isn't the solution. I had the chief of police on the show a few months ago, and that was one of his statements. They thought that they could arrest their way out of this out of this problem. What are some of the solutions that we can bring to this? How can we bring this to bear? How can we get beyond where we are now?
Is definitely something that devastated most families, including mine. My father was a drug addict. He's now clean. He's been clean for about 5 years. But you know, as you talked about heroin, crack cocaine hit our community and hit it pretty hard. So how do we deal with this issue? We make sure that we tell kids, and then we continue to tell our children that drugs, even marijuana, is a drug. You should not use it, and you institute programs to make sure that we deliver that message. Because a lot of times, I mean, if you think about the fact of seatbelts, and at one time nobody wore a seatbelt, but you keep telling people over and over and over again, and you know, eventually they listen to that. And I think that we have to continue to do that. I think that we need to continue to invest in our drug rehab programs and make sure that we are making opportunities for people that are recovering addicts to re-enter society, find gainful employment, and do what they need to do to take care of their families. Now you have an issue with our drug dealers, and what are you going to do to help them? You know, 50 Cent, you know, said that basically when you add it all up, they're really working for minimum wage. That message needs to resonate with people. The fact that you're on the corner basically 24 hours a day, or you're in a house pushing dope 24 hours a day. At the end of the day, you're making $7 an hour. You're waking up in the middle of the night to go and take care of that. You can work for 8 hours and make, you know, or 8 hours, or you can go to school, get your education, and take care of your family legally. And also the fact that at the end of the day, there's only two things that's going to happen. I don't know any dealer that I went to high school with, or that I knew was a dealer that I went to high school with in this community, that are either not in jail or 6 feet under. It's only two ways: in jail or you're 6 feet under.
I just think that we've got to figure this out. I think the community has to really get behind and support some of these issues. Is part of your district on Conklin and Clifford?
Yes.
In that little park there?
Yes.
I worked with Dr. Clovis on a project that they're working on over there.
Project Hope.
Yes, they're doing that. They observe the pot selling that's going over there. And now, how do you police that when pot has almost been decriminalized?
Yes.
I mean, these guys are smart enough to know that if they have small amounts of marijuana on them, that it's basically a fine, and the police have so many other things to do that it's almost a blind eye. And I know that they don't want to hear that, but the reality is that because of that.
I can tell you what that community wants to do.
Okay.
And they want to institute, and they're looking to institute a policy where they put out an order of protection against the individual from being in their neighborhood. Because the people that are coming to sell marijuana there don't live there.
Okay.
And so they want to put out an order of protection that says that if person X gets arrested for, or a parent's ticket for marijuana, we want an order of protection for our community. And if they're caught in this 4-block radius, again, then you're going to be arrested for violating our order of protection. Now, I can tell you that that's what my constituents want me to do. I'm not necessarily there yet. I think what we have tried to do, and we're working with the district attorney's office and the crime lab and the police department to actually arrest for the sale. Possession of is different than the sale of. You make the sale, you arrest for the sale. Me going downtown for possession is a fine in possibly 15 days. You going downtown for the sale is up to a year in prison. And then we will go to our judges and say, look, we need them to get the max. And, is that a way to deal with the issue? Some people think that doing that is extreme, but when you have a community like Project Hope, in the area that Project Hope, where we have a number of new housing developments going up, a huge investment from the community, neighbors taking their neighborhoods back, coming out, doing what they can do on their part. In every turn, they are bumping up against this wall that says, you know what? Oh, you want the park from 10 o'clock in the morning to 6? Fine, you can have it. Come 6:30, it's mine again. That's what they have to deal with. I was just talking to one of our police officers that said that he drove by and you had the same people doing pull-ups on the playground that the community put together for the children. And the children and families that live in the area are scared to take their children to this great new playground because of this issue. So I think that we have to start thinking about things outside of the box. We can do what we can do within the system, but when it does not work, we have to think about things a little bit differently.
I believe that in my mind brings this back to economic development. I believe, or I'll put it this way, I would like to believe that the majority of these young people that are out here engaging in this activity, if they had an opportunity to be employed, I like to believe that many of them would take the job versus doing this irrelevant way of living.
Well, I'll tell you, everybody that wants a job doesn't want to work. So, and I know firsthand. I know, I have a great relationship with some executives at Walmart, and we have referred folks over to there. When you have people calling in because they need to get their nails done, that type of stuff. Everybody that wants a job doesn't want to work. And we have opportunities. I mean, we talk about workforce development. Do we need more? Absolutely. But it's really preparing people to understand that, listen, when you go for an interview, they don't want to see your pants hanging down. They don't want a white T-shirt. If you need to go over to the Salvation Army or over to one of the other churches that are giving away clothes for free, do that. Get a pair of slacks. Get a shirt. And even when you get the job, I mean, I can tell you stories. Genesee Brewery just announced that they were hiring 70 new people. They asked for interviews from the community. We referred a number of people over there. I've had people that, yes, I want a job, and they put them to work, and within 4 hours, they quit. Working is not, something that's, if you've never really had to work like that in your life, or answering to a boss or something like that, it's very hard. And I think that we have to, before we put our young folks and put our folks in those situations, we need to prepare them for that. And I think that that's why the workforce development programs that our not-for-profits are doing are essential to making sure that our community gets gainful employment, but also are prepared and know what to expect. People are going to fall down on the job. It's not, but we also have to have our employers understand that they're going to make mistakes, and instead of firing them, if they're coming to work, if they're doing what they need to do, that we need to give them that opportunity. One of the programs, like I said, that's over at the Main Arts Building is the CCP program, which is a workforce training in the construction trades that the city of Rochester and the Joint School Construction project for the FMP started. You have 240 people over there, and that's left out of 1,000. What happened? Well, they start to drop off. When I start to make requirements, when they start to have to fulfill requirements, people will drop off because they can't fulfill them. And we also need to make sure our people understand marijuana is a drug. So they are going to test you for marijuana. I've had people I refer for jobs, when it comes down to, that drug test, they burn a hole in the cup. I mean, those are the types of things that, that happens, but we have to continue to do what we need to do on behalf of our community in spite of. They need opportunities.
What about gang violence? Has that been curbed at all? Have we decreased in that area?
Well, violence across the board has been reduced. Our crime statistics have gone down across the board. We've seen a spike in the last couple of weeks, gang violence. If a number of the shootings that occurred over the last 2 weekends, we have attributed to gang violence and house parties and other things. So we still have to deal with that, and I think that the police chief, with his Policing in the Spirit of Service initiative, has really, taken on a new form of, we want to have a relationship with you. We recognize in government that we can't do this by ourselves. We can't govern our way out of it. We can't, as the police chief said, we can't arrest our way out of this. It is a partnership. I need every citizen, every constituent that wants to do their part and want to help. We need them to help. We need their relationships. We need them to feel safe and secure to give us a call. We need them to understand that we are here to help and not to harm, and we are in this with them. And I think that sometimes our citizens feel like they're in it all by themselves, and that's not true. We understand the issues and the problems, and we can do what we can do, but at the end of the day, our police officers, they go home. At the end of the day, our mayor, myself, we go home. And they have to live there. And so we have to do our part to make sure that the environment that they have to live in is better. But we also need their help. So when it's time to throw that wrapper from the corner store in the garbage, I need you to throw it in the garbage. I need you to tell our children to throw it in the garbage. I need them to take pride in their community and take pride in their city. A girl named Sabrina is launching a, Protect the Hood initiative, which really is about, a litter campaign, but more so than litter, it's about taking pride in the environment where you live at. I grew up on the west side of the city, and, we were proud. I mean, you were proud. I mean, and we used to have this, this thing where it was like, oh, I'm from the west side or I'm from the east side, and, you felt good about where your neighborhood, where you were from. We need to get that sense of pride back, and I think that we can do that, and we have to take it, one house at a time, one block at a time, one neighborhood at a time. One of the things that the city is doing, and the mayor announced this on Friday, but through an initiative that working with the administration, city council members, was hiring more officers and firefighters of color. We went through a serious recruitment initiative, and that recruitment initiative, I and a number of city council, Dana Miller, Adam McFadden, Loretta Scott, we went to our churches, we met with our ministers and their parishioners and said, look, we need you. You may not, want this particular job, but somebody that want it. And our firefighter exam was restricted to having to live within the city of Rochester, and basically, because of that, this fall, we will be having a class in our police department and our fire department, and we will have more minorities in those classes than in the history of classes in those types of classes. And so that's the way, community and government working hand in hand and together. That's the only way that we can do this.
I told you off camera, this hour goes by so quickly. We're down to the last 2 minutes. Before you go, I want to thank you so much for coming on. And part of the reason why I wanted you to come on is because I believe that if the community can understand that it's just more than us electing you into office, we have to understand what it is that you're doing in office and what our part is. Unfortunately, many times we vote people into office and then we go off and do whatever it is that we do. And when these things don't get fixed, we think that now there's something wrong with the person that we elected into office. And we don't put up any effort to, help move these things along. Nor do we have a lot of this information that you shared with us today that I would assume is readily available, but where people don't know where to get this information. People don't know that these things are happening. I'm glad that you shared with us about how the job opportunities were available or opened up to become available at this brewery, and then how we misguidedly came into these positions unprepared. So it gets us an opportunity as a community to see what we have to do to become prepared so we can be successful. And I tell you sharing this information with us today, I'll tell you, I gained a lot from this. I totally enjoyed this. And once again, before we leave, I'm still going to throw in one more plug. You have made a very compelling argument that I believe for the school district. But now, seriously speaking, I truly believe that with the school district and the ideas that you have and that you shared with us today, maybe we can begin to improve the graduation rate with the things that we were talking about as far as the drugs. Maybe we can get the community to start taking their community back. Perhaps maybe we can now rally stronger behind our elected officials so we can help move some issues along.
Oh, absolutely. And I can just tell you, when I look at the work that I've done, rather it's through working with Assemblyman David Gant in his office or, on city council, I know when I ran for office 5 years ago, and I just ran for re-election last year, and I said, if my community was not better, because of my service, then I would not run again. And I see things, I think that, when you're in it every day, for example, if I see my child every day, I may not see the growth in her, but because I am coming in and out, I'm able to see the growth in our community, and I am able to see the growth in Northeast Rochester and the houses that's being torn down and the businesses that are opening up and the crime rates that are going down, as well as the positive things. And so I want us to now believe in our city and believe that we are on our way back. Did we hit a rough patch? Absolutely. But we are not giving up. We are Rochesterians first, and we love Rochester. People that come here from other cities, they love Rochester. They can't believe that, one of the people from the Greater Rochester Visitors Association had said, you know what, it's the people that live in Rochester that we have the most problems with. The people that visit here love here. And I want to turn that around. I want the people that live here to be proud that they're from Rochester, and the fact that we care more about our city and our citizens, but we have to do it together, one block at a time.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
My name is James Young. I'll see you next week. Be blessed, and remember, it's a new day.